Hello. Hi, Brett. Can you hear me? Hi, Brett. Can you hear me? Hello. Brett, is your mic open?
Hello?
Hello, Brett. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, yes.
Great. How are you?
So I'm doing fine. I'm finishing up getting some dinner for my son, and then I'll go upstairs. I know I should know the answer to this because I asked before. It will be on video as well, correct?
It will be on?
I'm sorry, will it be video or just audio?
It will be video as well.
Okay, I'll go upstairs so I'm not standing in my kitchen doing
No
video.
worries. We still have 5 minutes. You can
Okay.
take your time.
Okay, I will. Thank you. I will. Let me go back on mute momentarily.
Yeah, sure. We still have 5 minutes.
Okay.
Great.
Karishma?
Yes.
Okay. You can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, you can see me?
Yes, I can see you.
Okay, very good. My phone's a little outdated, but I think it's better than my laptop, so I'm going to attempt to just stay kind of as I am, where I'm holding the phone in one hand, and I'll attempt not to sort of look away too terribly much as I grab my notes and what have you.
That's perfectly fine. That's
So
perfect.
let me get my papers in order. I wonder if it's probably a little bit too far. Do we know about how many people we're expecting?
Around 150 to 200.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
All right. Let me get my questions.
Sure. I think let's just start.
Okay.
Great.
That sounds good.
Hello, good evening, everyone. This is Karishma Sharma, Marketing Manager, High Counselor, welcomes you all to the webinar Career as a Business Development Manager with our guest speaker, Brett Ashton, Partner Marketing Manager, Android Enterprise at Google. So,
good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your evening or early morning if everyone is in different locations. So I appreciate this opportunity to spend a few minutes and chat with everyone and kind of give my perspective on my career path, as well as hopefully have time for questions at the end. So, Karishma, am I to assume that the audience is on mute?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Brett, for being here. We would really love to hear you throughout the webinar. So here, let us quickly discuss today's agenda. We'll start with a brief High Counselor introduction. Then we'll introduce everyone to our guest speaker, followed with a question and answer session, which is an opportunity for you to ask questions from a guest speaker. Before we get started, I wanted to give you a few ground rules and info about the structure of this webinar. Today's webinar will follow a question answer structure. So our host today will, that's me, will let you ask questions from our guest speaker. You will be muted throughout the webinar and you will have the option to ask questions by using the chat box or by using the comment section here. You can comment on the YouTube as we are live there, and you can even share the link with your friends, and you can even like this webinar. Great. So before we turn it over to our host, we would just wanted to quickly introduce ourselves. Who are we actually? So we are High Counselor, an online and mobile platform that helps job seekers and students land their dream job by connecting them to the employees who work at their dream company. I am sure you all know today getting coaching from a company insider can dramatically increase your chances, not only to ensure that the job you're aiming is for the right fit for you, but also to help you land in your dream job. Isn't that exciting? Great. So stay tuned till the end of the webinar for the more information, and we regularly host such events. So I would request you all to please sign up on our platform so that you can be updated about the upcoming webinars. Great. So, Brett, we would love to hear about your background and professional experience. And
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for your time and participation. We would love to know about your professional experience. Over to you, Brett.
Thank you, everyone. Let me try to give sort of a Cliff Notes summary of my background. I've done a lot of different things, so we can say that I'm a seasoned or senior in my role, but I'll try to give you, the kind of background and particularly how some of the different experiences I've had in my mind flowed into, my career as a business development manager. And I guess I'll, let me establish a couple of ground rules, myself as we go through this. Certainly I'm kind of giving you my take and my experience. I certainly encourage you kind of not to take anything that I say as the 100%, total honest truth all of the time. I think it's very important to Karishma's earlier comment about different coaching and guidance and guidelines. So I think, at the same time, you should have a plan and an idea of where you want to go, but you should also take in, different information and viewpoints, maybe some things you agree with, some things you don't agree with. So I'm going to, throughout this time, I'm going to share how I see things. And then, you take that and take it and kind of work with it. Don't hesitate to, kind of add your own spin, onto that, onto that as well. So, educationally, interestingly enough, my background's in finance. I have an undergraduate in finance and an MBA in finance. And I say that, not specifically about how I applied that necessarily in business development, although I would tell you that the analytical skills, whether it's, understanding numbers or times where I was in a sales role on sales quota, but just being able to look at a situation, analyze it, make some assessments of data, be able to review data that you get from other people. Let's say you're, doing more deal-oriented stuff and somebody gives you some revenue estimates or volume estimates or a term sheet, being able to understand, that and having those analytical skills is something that I found, very helpful. I think, again, career-wise, I kind of determined early on that I didn't necessarily want to do the day-to-day job of being a financial analyst. I wanted to get closer to the product. So early in my career at HP, I moved both organizations and functions. And at the time, I'm trying to think what was called. It was really called a sales development role. And I'll loosely, as I talk about how I define, business development, that early position that I had was really about acting as the go-between between the, what I called back then the factory. Think of it as the division or the product organization in the field. So I sat in marketing and sat with all the product folks and all the other functions that you would think about, R&D and finance and marketing and competition and all of those folks. But my attention was always outside of the building, whether it was with field and end users or, channel managers and channel folks. And I'll kind of come back to that as we go along and really talk about how I viewed, business development. So after a number of roles, touching customers and channel partners at HP, product-wise, most focused around the industry standard or x86 server products that were initially first HP and then ultimately became Compaq after Compaq acquired HP, or HP acquired Compaq, I guess, quite a few years ago. I also had some experience, starting up an e-commerce business, also for the, for the server products, and spent the last third of my time at HP, again, doing I'll call it loosely sales and business development role focused on direct procurement. So those large customers of HP that wanted to buy direct, and then not only buy direct, but buy globally. So at one level, I was engaging and evangelizing with the customers. At another level, I was working with internal stakeholders within inside HP in order to, allow a large corporate global customer to buy direct, and whether that was in local language or local currency, or even in some cases, say Latin America or Eastern Europe, we had to have a reseller in place, to do that. So again, after a number of years at HP, as you well know, the economy kind of fell off a cliff about a decade ago, and I was part of a pretty large, workforce reduction there. After some time and just kind of dealing with that and some other, personal things with my aging parents, again, given kind of where I am in life, I took on a role that was more marketing oriented, but it was channel and partner oriented. So I don't know that I'd call it business development in the strict terms. And, as I talk about my background, I'm going to give some definitions of how I view, business development. But I was really focused on channel partners, how to enable those partners and make them successful, whether that was, enabling events or looking for new go-to-market or new market opportunities. So after that role and a short stint at a marketing automation company, also in partner marketing, I realized that I wanted to get closer to both products and customers and the field. And I did a little bit of a pivot, if you want to think about it, back to my roots in the server business. And I joined Supermicro, which is historically a white box server manufacturer, an OEM provider. And interestingly enough, for this discussion, my title there was Senior Business Development Manager. Although I would offer to you it was much more sales oriented, but the business development piece was really focused around new opportunities and new verticals and new routes to market, which I'll touch on. So then finally, most recently, as Karishma pointed out, I kind of made another change back onto the partner marketing side, with most recently with Google through our tech information systems, doing partner marketing work within Android Enterprise, which is essentially a software stack or a software solution that allows you to bring your personal device into the company and allows your company to manage that device. So I worked on launching that solution with a couple of key partners such as Mobile Iron, BlackBerry, AirWatch, Mass 360, which are all enterprise mobility partners, and also started a little bit of work in the co-op and MDF part. So that's a really quick view of my background. So let me, if you want me to keep going a little bit, Karishma, let me kind of look at the second topic, which roles and responsibilities of a business development manager. So I just spent a few minutes in discussing kind of all these different things that I've done. So let me give you Brett's definition. Sorry, just trying to get that. Let me give you Brett's definition of this role.
Sure.
And I think in my mind, I kind of see it in two buckets. Right? There's the business development titles that in essence are more sales related, about, getting new deals, new customers, new wins that you may or may not close on your own. That's kind of one bucket. And the other bucket that I see is a little bit more partnership, related. So you might see, for example, a business development role in a gaming company or with a phone company where you're out looking for corporate partnerships and other types of things like that, where, again, with the risk of too many cliches, where 1 + 1 = 3. So I would tell you that my experience probably leans a little bit more towards the former, particularly my role at Supermicro. While it was titled Senior Business Development Manager, ultimately what I was trying to do was open up opportunities and sell server storage and networking, infrastructure. So yes, at one level, I would consider that sales. But at another level, I was constantly looking at sort of things that I would call net new or white space. But what I mean by that is, let's combine the server storage and networking and some secret sauce software, put it in a rack, and figure out a new way to market. What you will often see, if we kind of want to drill this down into, issues around job search, is many jobs that are ultimately sales jobs, will be classified or titled as business development. And you kind of really need to read in and understand, what that means. In some cases, it basically means, go knock on these doors and open up these opportunities. And then when they start to buy stuff, we'll turn it over to an account manager, and then you go find the next thing. That's not always the case. So think of that as more the sales, view of the world. There's another flavor of business development, I guess, again, that I see that I would call more deal oriented, where you would see, again, in more of a corporate role, or you would see in some cases considered more partnership opportunities, right? The folks in Apple that are making these streaming services in that business, I'm sure some of them are called business development managers, where they're working with, the content providers and trying to structure a deal and an opportunity. So in my mind, that's very different than the first example that I gave as selling something per se. I mean, yes, you have metrics, but the thought process, let's say, maybe is a little bit more high level and a little bit more, multi-dimensional as you're trying to come up with a way for, for these two companies to, to kind of come together. So let me, if you want me to kind of keep going through some of the key questions, Karishma, please feel free to, direct me or give me time guidelines.
Sure. Thank you so much, Brett, for such an inspiring background and a professional experience you shared with us. That was really inspiring, and
Thank you.
For sharing the roles and responsibilities of a business development manager. So, Brett, I would be asking you questions from my end, and I would request your valuable insights on the same.
Absolutely.
So,
whenever you're ready.
Sure. My next question is, what is your typical day as a business development manager? We would love to know this.
That's an interesting one. I mean, I'm not sure that as I think about, 2019 in the world of work, there is such a thing as a typical day, because I'm really somebody that believes in, the kind of work anywhere, anytime. If maybe you're out visiting customers, maybe you start your day in your hotel room online, or at the local Starbucks or coffee shop. So I think for me, as I think about, whether I'm, let's say most recently when I was going into the office, I use the commute to kind of, get myself oriented for the day. As electronic as I am, I still tend to print out, calendars. So I might take a couple minutes and kind of look at my calendar for the day, understand what meetings I have, any other kinds of action items. I'm definitely somebody that is kind of generally always attached to my phone. So I want to know, in my most recent responsibility, I only had North America focus, but I still obviously had the time zone, as I had partners that were on the East Coast. So I would want to know, maybe when I first got up at 6 a.m, what emails do I have, waiting for me? Is there a deadline that I need to adhere to where I need to get back to somebody by 9 o'clock Pacific time, because that's noon, on the East Coast? In the most recent, role that I had, and this may not kind of be the case across business development, I had a lot of things that were kind of time sensitive, getting ready for the launch, meaning, okay, my stakeholders need this information so that they could go back and create, a document, a landing page, some social media content. And if I was late on my end, then I would, make the whole downstream process, late. So I don't necessarily think of a typical day. I think of how am I set up to make sure that, I'm kind of ready for anything, if you think about it that way, right? Do I have all the right tools? Do I know all the tips and tricks to, log into video, or do I have the right apps? For example, do I have Zoom installed on my device in case I need to get on a call with an external partner? One thing just to point out in that way, obviously at Google, the desire is for everyone to use, Google, the G Suite application. So, Hangouts would be the default where possible. But in some cases, you're dealing with a partner and they may have, WebEx or GoToMeeting or Zoom or some other solution, and you have to be flexible and kind of adapt to their environment.
Wow, Brett, that sounds really challenging, I would say. Here comes my next question. we would love to know your, few tips about how to break into business development manager role.
Okay. Um, I don't know that my tips are any different for business development managers per se in terms of, breaking into anything else. So let me, and I kind of touched on this, let me define kind of how I look at these roles. So the word that I've developed over time is something I call outbound. I don't necessarily, define it as, oh, this is a sales thing or a quota thing. I think of it as a mindset where even in the example I gave most recently as a quote unquote channel or partner marketing person, I was always thinking about, the needs of my partners. Now, obviously it's a little different if I use the super micro example where, I was on quota in terms of how much, infrastructure that I sold, but I still had the same thought process, even dating back to some of my times at HP, which again, I would call outbound. So if I was telling somebody again, how do you break into that, then I would sort of look at, those types of skills. And what I mean by that is, are you a quick learner? Are you a quick learner? Can you think on your feet? Do you know how to go get information to come up a learning curve, for example? Do you know how partners think? I mean, customer service is not really the right word, but you have to think about it and say, hey, I'm working with these folks and, they need something, right? I might think it's basic. Hey, it's a piece of collateral. Go find it on the website. Well, I can teach them how to find it on the website so that they do it the next time. But maybe this first time, to get the relationship going, I have to go find that piece of content and email it to them. So the way I look at it is taking that mindset of, what are the needs of my stakeholders? And in this case, I'm mostly focusing on your external people, but obviously you have internal stakeholders as well. And can I demonstrate that and can I take, very good care of them? So I think from a breaking in perspective, you really have to look at the particular role and how that may play out. If you're looking at something that says more sales oriented, then you're probably going to have to demonstrate, that more tactical, sales experience. I've had these customers and, this is what I've done. If it's more deal oriented, in some cases I've seen where they want either an educational experience and maybe having an MBA. In some cases, if it's really deal oriented or what might be called corporate development instead of business development, they might look for somebody that has, Wall Street M&A experience. That's a little bit of a different, a different aside. As I think about it, here's maybe a simpler way to think through it. You've got if you think about, two sides, right? See if I can, on one side, you'll have your products, right? Whatever business, whether it's in my case, server hardware or an Android stack or a SaaS product or a security appliance, whatever that widget is. And then on the other side, you have customers if you're in direct sales, partners if you're in channel sales, technology partners. You have these, again, I'm going to use that same word, these outbound entities. So how can you demonstrate that, and it goes both ways. How can you demonstrate you can meet their needs, back into the organization? And how can you demonstrate that you can carry the flag for whatever that product is, out into that, out into that audience? So I think you need to be able to kind of sell that vision. And that's kind of a focus on. Now, obviously, again, if we're talking about the nuts and bolts of job search, then you have to be clear that you check off all the boxes on that particular role.
Wow, thank you so much for such valuable tips, Brett. Brett, we would love to know 3 tips to make the resume stand out for BDM position, as in business development position.
Okay. Again, I'm not sure I have business development specific things. I mean, I think you want to should look at my own. You want to highlight those things where you've done the key areas that the employer is looking for. Let's say you're starting to get that experience at a more entry level, maybe as a sales development rep, right? Can you point to, the phone skills or the number of appointments? Can you point to a mastery of social media where you can take a prospect list and know how to scour that prospect list for the best prospects and feed that into your funnel and generate appointments, out of that? Can you point to some transferable skills where maybe you've done, something like that before? Maybe your background is product or engineering, and you use that experience to say, well, I've managed these products from cradle to grave, so I'm confident that I can take that technical experience and combine it with, with these other skills that I have and kind of show out that way. I think, to be really honest, it's difficult to make your resume stand out in today's world with applicant tracking and scanning and keywords. So, at one level, I would say, obviously make sure it's accurate and stands out and, uses all the right keywords for a role that you're applying for. And I think the second piece is, depending on where you are in your career, I'm going to say, I'm not talking about necessarily for fee, but I'm saying get some professional or subject matter help, right? If you're in school, go to your career center and take advantage of those options. If you're out of school and you can afford it financially, go to some workshops where you can get your resume reviewed, and those are generally free. Sometimes at career fairs, they'll have, one-to-many resume review. And if you have the ability and the resources, go to a third party and invest the money, to have a resume that's either updated or created. So I don't know that I would say, do these three things. I mean, obviously, be truthful, format it correctly, and all those things. I really view those as almost a given in 2019.
Great. Thank you so much, Brett. Brett, what do you think is the best job search strategy for business development manager position?
Again, I think your mileage will vary, but what I would sort of recommend from an initial, research perspective is, and you'll get a lot of people that will discuss, sort of the ins and outs of applying to jobs online. That's probably another topic, for another day. But I think it is important to understand what companies are looking for, right? So we talked a little bit earlier about, what does even business development mean, right? It means some things to some companies. It means sales. In other situations, it means deals. So I would say, one of the benefits of the black hole application process and the job boards, if you will, it does give you access to written out jobs with bullet points and experience. And again, I think you have to take it with a grain of salt as well, because those are kind of written, for unicorns that hit all of those things. But if you look at enough, you start to get a sense of what employers are looking for. Again, I'm not saying spend all your time, clicking on LinkedIn and the job boards and sending in and uploading your resume. I think you should do some of that. But by spending some of your time scouring that and pulling down recs and looking at it, it gives you a sense of, this is what people are looking for in terms of years of experience, in terms of education, in terms of, different things that I've done. And with that, then you can start painting a picture of, okay, these are the things that I need to make sure that I highlight, right? So if it's one of these sales-oriented things, I need to, if I haven't done it before, in the interview process, I need to make it, abundantly clear that I'm cool with all that sales, whether it's cold calling, whether it's prospecting, whether it's typing things into Salesforce, whatever that is. Again, if I'm oversimplifying sort of my definition of business development in terms of the two continuums that I gave you. If it's more deal oriented, then in some cases in recs that I've read, I'm not saying be a lawyer, but I'm saying, you might see legal background. So somebody that can sit down and look at a contract with a third party and, and understand that. So again, I'm not sure I would say, what if there's a specific job search strategy. I think it's all about matching, what you have with those roles. So I'll boil it down into sort of twofold, right? What I just talked about is how do you understand what's out there so you can be more competitive a candidate? That's what I think about in terms of customizing my resume, right? What can I do to make Brett stand out so that maybe when I do push in through the applicant system, I get pulled off the top of the pile, if you will. And I think the second part is, get away from your computer, get out and meet people and do informational interviews and go to industry events and, by hook or crook, go to a meetup or a couple of weeks ago here in the Bay Area was RSA, which is the big security conference. And oftentimes you can get a free expo pass, right? You can't go to the sessions and you can't eat the food, but you can walk the floor. That's an awesome way to, let's say you're interested in security, to get a whole bunch of information in a short period of time, talk to a bunch of people, and you'll start to see, these guys are sales guys, or these guys are, scouring the floor for somebody else that they can partner with. So combine, the stuff that you learn in front of your computer with the stuff that you learn in the real world and try to combine those two things together.
Thank you so much for the fantastic answer, Brett. So we would like to know, what are the 5 interview questions you think are relevant for the business development manager position?
Okay. Well, I think the tell me about yourself and your background is kind of number one for all positions. So make sure that you look at your resume, you can tell your story, right? So obviously we talked about this earlier, don't have anything in your resume you can't speak to or tell a story. So practice that narrative of how much and how little information that you want to give, for that's one. Depending on how long it is, you might want to spend more time or less time, in your most recent role. Connected to that, let's call that, kind of lost track of the 5. Let's call that, 2A and 2B. So 2B is obviously if one of your past experiences is most directly related to the job that you're looking for, right? Maybe it's the same industry, maybe it's sales, and the role is sales, you want to focus on that. I think that there's certainly a lot more behavioral interviewing going on. It's not across the board for every company, but I would recommend that you kind of be aware of how to answer those questions. That's tell me about a situation where you disagreed with your manager, or one I just had a couple of weeks ago. Tell me about a product launch or something that failed or wasn't successful. Let's not say failed. And what did you do? And what did you learn from it? As cheesy as it sounds, what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? You do get asked those. So be able to answer those. And so again, I think in terms of the interview process, I'm going to give similar advice as to what I said about the job search, right? There's information out there that, you can get behind your computer, whether it's, obviously there's a number of LinkedIn communities that are job search focused, and there's a whole boatload. I just recently discovered some folks that were doing job search podcasts. That's another thing. So you got those that you can kind of do on your own, and combine that with practicing with people, right? So if you're in a focused job search, you could have what's called a success team, which is maybe a couple people that you work with, and you can either do that from a encouragement perspective. So it's kind of you keep yourself accountable. You meet once a week and have coffee and talk about what you've done. But you can also go and do some more in-depth workshops where you practice interviewing, right? So I'm the interviewer and you're the interviewee, and we practice it, and then we flip it around and we critique each other. So, what I would say in my experience is a lot of this stuff in terms of the turning the crank from a job search perspective are learned skills. There's skills that you can learn, that you can practice, and if you can learn it and practice, you can get better at it.
Fantastic. Thank you for such an elaborative answer, Britt. I'm sure these tips would really be valuable for our attendees who are just gluing to our webinar. So, my question is, could you please tell us three best books or resources to aid in business development manager job?
Okay, so I keep feeling like I'm not giving you the total answer. That I don't know that I have any books, necessarily. I think earlier in my career, in my life, I was a voracious reader of books, probably less business oriented. I think for me, the last decade or so, I'm really consuming most of the information that I get, either online, directly, or for me, most predominantly, via social media. So I view that from a job search perspective in a couple of ways. Almost as a reflex action, if I'm not following the company, I usually start on LinkedIn. So if it's a new company, then I follow the company so that I get updates. I explode out who the employees are to see who I know or see where they're located, or to see who I know that knows someone there, right? That's the one. And then I'm a huge fan of the real-time nature of Twitter. So I would go to Twitter and do the same thing, right? Am I following the company? And sometimes I'll look and say, oh, they haven't tweeted in a year and a half. That's that's a bit of a red flag, right? That tells me that you're not really engaged, in that way. But I want to follow every company where possible. I'm actually capped on followers, but that's another issue, or people that I can follow. But I want to follow every company that I apply to or that I'm researching. Again, I can give you kind of anecdotal things where, they may have a webinar, right? And in some cases, they'll want you to have sort of a corporate email address to sign up for the webinar, and that's not always the case. So you could dial into, the webinar for the company you're interviewing, and you could learn a lot more about it. In some cases, they may have like a customer event, like a luncheon, or, come see us at this trade show. So, those are the first pass things, from a social media perspective. If I'm digging in, I will go and look at the about me on the company page. Again, I'll look at as you can hear, I'm sort of very focused on networking. I'll look at who's in the executive staff, and I don't necessarily know anybody directly there, but maybe I know somebody that knows them. More recently, for startups and smaller companies, I'm looking at who funds them. So maybe I know somebody that works in that space, and I could say, can you answer some questions about XYZ, company? Most companies have blogs. I won't tell you that I'm religious in terms of, reading all those. I will look for, some interesting things. And then again, for a lot of the things you've heard me talk about are partner oriented. So most companies will have a list of who their ecosystem partners are. So I want to know who their resellers are, who their technology partners are, again, so that I can start constructing, I could call up somebody and they could give me a perspective. Or if I'm in an interview with a hiring manager, I could say something like, and I'm making this up, tell me what you're working on with AWS, and how do you go to market with AWS, and what do those things look like? Because I've taken a look at, I've taken a look at that. So I wouldn't necessarily take my response as a total dinging of, reading books. I think depending on where you are in your, education and career, you certainly always want to be learning. And however, whatever form that takes, if you really think there's a skill gap or something, then, you might need to go to a local community college or an extension and sort of pick that up. I think you will also find, in many cases, given how easy it is to publish, there's a lot of self-published books or or white papers or things like that that you can download that have the same ultimate function of gathering that info.
Wonderful. Great. So here comes my next question. What are the three key skills required for business development manager role?
Three key skills. And I guess in no particular order. I think there are and again, this is my opinion. One is, can you put yourself in the shoes of your customer, your prospect, your partner, right? Can you really see the viewpoint of what's bringing them to the table and how they see it from their perspective? So that's one. Two, I think, is you need to be really good communicator, right? You're going to find yourself kind of in these situations where you're in the middle of a bunch of folks and you need to kind of distill or boil down whatever it is that you're dealing with and make it, not simple, but make it easy to digest. So I've always been one that's kind of fond of bullet points and, probably from a young age, at least if I think about speaking, like more public speaking, right? Tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. So just a real basic framework or mnemonic that allows you to, to communicate. And I guess again, the think in your customer's shoes, or again, what I call being outbound communication. And I think the third piece is relationship, oriented. I don't think I have to tell you how small the world is and how many people know, other people, or you might say, hey, I worked with you a couple of companies ago. Can you tell me what's going on? Or can you pass along my resume? So that's a couple of different things. One, wherever possible, of course, don't burn any bridges. But more importantly, kind of understand how you can not only cultivate that network and say, I'm going to, I'm here to gather connections, but how can you give back to that, right? Maybe somebody else is asking, hey, do you know a person that does this? And maybe somebody that does that. And you say, hey, can you reach out, to my friend, over here? So, think about ways that you can contribute to those relationships and not just, hey, I need something from you. I need you to help me get this job.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the lovely answer. So, Brett, what are the 4 challenges do you think that you face in your job as a business development manager?
That's a good one. One I think is, when do you say no? Or how do you know, kind of what not to do? One of the cool things that I've always found is kind of when you're out there, in the world, let's say you're at a trade show or some kind of industry event, everything looks really cool. Right? Oh, this is really interesting. And, let's talk about this, or look at who I met at this booth, or, let's go have a lunch or go have a drink or something. But, there's only so much you can do, right? There's only so many resources and money and you're only one person. So I think prioritization and understanding, what I'm going to do and what I'm not going to do, right? Am I going to do this? Is it going to meet my needs? So that's sort of number one is, when to say no. I think another thing is to make sure that you're managing inside the organization, that you have to keep that balance. So I talked over these last 30 minutes or so about, the outbound part of it, right? Being out there and talking to customers and partners. And, you could argue maybe some of those aspects are the quote unquote fun part of the job, but you also have to meet the needs of your manager and your manager's manager and understand what other stakeholders internally, right? So if you're out doing all this stuff and you're not doing what you need to support the latest product launch for the product marketing team, one, that's not the right thing to do. Two, the next time you need something from that product marketing team to meet, for one of your customers or partners, they may not be as inclined to help you out because, you kind of slow played with what they needed. That's two. I think I'm going to stop at three. I think the third piece is to really keep up with what's going on in your space, right? Things change so quickly. And even, I would say, oh, I'm pretty plugged in. I talked about the social media. I was at an event today that was kind of a meetup, if you will, or best practices around, channel and partner marketing. And I was talking to somebody at my table, and they pointed out that their company, who had acquired a couple companies, was getting bought by another company. And I knew I knew this company. In fact, they had been my customer before, and I knew the other company. I had no idea that one was buying the other. And I was like, oh, this is really interesting. So that was one that, had missed me. And right now, if I was working directly with either of those, obviously that would be something that, that I want to know. So, and I think that, I don't know if I call that a challenge. It's more of a best practice, right? Get out of your comfort zone and get out of your bubble and make sure that you're talking to people and learning things. And, I keep kind of going back to that continuous improvement piece.
Great. So, what are the four challenges do you face? I'm sorry. I mean,
Yeah, we
what is
did
the
that.
career path of a business development manager?
That's a tough one. I think so. Again, if we kind of use the paradigm that I had, which if you think about it from the sales perspective, you're probably looking at, the business development or senior business development manager. In many cases, what I've seen is those roles tend to be what's called career roles, which in some cases you could, stay in that position, for quite a period of time. I think certainly the next potential logical step could either be to be a people manager. So you take those skills and say, I'm going to manage a team of, more junior folks. It could be taking on a more global responsibility. So maybe you're doing stuff in the U.S. and Latin America or North America, but you take on EMEA, or you take on, from a global perspective. I think in larger companies, you may find opportunities to move laterally and get some other experience. I made up an example with AWS. So maybe, you're working on, again, this is totally a stylized example, database partners. And you do that and you say, well, there's a biz dev role working with the startup ecosystem. So getting startups to deploy on AWS. Or maybe, there's a reseller role where you have resellers and service providers and SIs that are reselling, their services on top of AWS, right? So those are three different, very different types of jobs that you could have in one, in one particular company. I think this one, and this is a tough one to learn, really is all about, what are you interested in, right? Do you want to be in a company and go up? Do you want to take the knowledge from that larger company and get smaller and have more of a responsibility? So in theory, if you go to a smaller organization, you could have let's not say a bigger impact. You could have a different impact if you're in an organization that's 125 people as opposed to 750, for example.
Lovely. Thank you for such a wonderful answer, Brett. Brett, what do you think three things a candidate should consider while selecting an employer for business development manager position?
Okay, that's a good one. I mean, I think this one I definitely don't think is business development specific. I mean, I know that you need to work and you have bills to pay and, all that, but I highly encourage you to make sure that a company and the culture lines up with what's important to you, right? Because in some cases, right, you're going to spend more time there than you do with your, with your family, right? So do you like the people, right? Is it if it's a work hard, play hard, hey, we're going to, I don't know what, again, I'm showing my age, we're going to have, Nerf guns or outings or, go take a boat on the San Francisco Bay on the weekends as a team building thing, or have a beer bust, or the group, goes out for a drink or something like that. Make sure that you understand that the culture of the company fits with what you're, interested in. They can be very different, right? Some places are more confrontational in order to get something done. It's who yells the loudest. Make sure that they meet your needs in terms of diversity, and those things are just are just vitally important. So I think it's that fit and understanding the culture and the manager, right? I mean, you don't get to necessarily pick your manager, but make sure that you have an understanding of what your manager is interested in, that you're on the same page. It's somebody that you think you can learn from. So I've always felt like, hey, do I learn something new every day when I come in the door, right? Am I excited when I tag in to go in? So those things are important. I'm not saying that you can't get a situation where, this isn't necessarily what I want, but it's a job and I'm paying the bills. I get that, but it goes by quickly. So I would highly encourage you to make sure that you are in a place that really feels like it lines up with what you want. And that's going to be different for everybody, right? Some people are like, I'm good with the work hard, play hard. Some people are like, I don't want to socialize with the people I work with. I want to come in and do my thing and leave. I'll give you a better example. And maybe, I don't know the age group, is some people really may need a flexible schedule, right? Hey, I've got kids that I take in the morning. I need to start my day at 10 and leave at 7, right? And I would think, without oversimplifying it, that 2019, most companies would be on board with that, but not all are. You end up in a company that says, hey, I want you physically at your desk, or your manager calls meetings at 4:00 on a Friday afternoon. You have to understand that well enough to know whether that's something you're cool with.
Great. Thank you so much, Brett. So here comes my last question. What
Okay.
advice do you have for aspiring business development manager to be successful in their
Yeah.
roles?
If I can think about summarizing this, I mean, I think I kind of touched on it. Learn. Always be learning. Always, be taking in information so that you can really, kind of represent that to who you need to, represent it. So again, at the risk of kind of repeating myself, I don't know that, are these suggestions to be successful, are they business development related or sort of career related? So I'm going to go back to the fit thing, right? To really understand that you're in line with with what your company's doing, or the flip side, right? If you're doing it for the paycheck, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, be upfront with that, so that maybe you're not going to get these other, it's not going to feed your soul in the same way. I mean, there's some people that, their job really feeds their soul in that way. They think they're doing something and, the next great thing, and that's awesome. But, not everybody has that. So if that's something that's important to you, you definitely want to find, again, that organization where, you're excited when you tag in. And then I can tell you from personal experience, I've kind of had both. I can definitely think of a work environment where, I don't know how I want to put it. I wasn't as enthused when I tagged in. And, after not too long a period of time, that starts to, kind of float in through how you look at your thing, how you look at things, and maybe even how you do your job.
Great. Thank you so much, Brett, for sharing your such valuable insights and expertise and your advices with us. We loved hearing to you.
No,
So
thank you.
I would now quickly like to share a few important things, a brief story of High Counselor Inception. We are that there are three major reasons due to which most of the people find difficulty in getting jobs. So number one, it's lack of connection with company insiders, lack of information about company and job position, and the third one I feel is the candidates are not well prepared for the interview many a times. So we solve this problem by connecting job seekers with the company insiders. What does High Counselor exactly do? Let me brief you guys. Suppose I want to get a job at Facebook. I could log into High Counselor website or mobile app, search for the current employee working at Facebook or any company that you're looking for, and immediately book a phone or email appointment for tips and career advice. Yes, you caught me right. I can take one-to-one coaching from someone working in my dream company. So I'm sure that's interesting, no? So great. So counselors work in top companies in product technology and consulting domains. If that is target industry, definitely check out highcounselor.com. Just like this webinar, we conduct webinars every week. Do not forget to sign up on High Counselor platform. It will help us to keep you posted about upcoming awesome webinars. Fantastic. Now, with the very important information is we upload all our recordings on the YouTube channel. Moreover, we were live as well today. So do not forget to sign up on our High Counselor platform. It will help us to keep you posted with the upcoming awesome webinars. And all of our recordings you will find here on this portal. If I would request, if you must hit the bell icon, this one, if you guys can see, so that you can be posted about the upcoming webinars every time we take care of. So if you liked our webinar, if you enjoyed this webinar, it will be great if you can share a word count about High Counselor on your social media channels. And I hope finally you found this webinar really helpful. We'll send you a survey in the next couple of days. We'll be hosting events like this regularly. So please let us know what you think so that we can ensure that you're getting maximum benefit and valuable info from those webinars. So thank you everyone for attending this webinar. And thank you so much, Brett. It was lovely being with you. It was lovely listening to you. You were really inspiring. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Take care, everyone.
You too. Bye.